In 2024, an astonishing 15.5 million acres of the Amazon rainforest burned. Driven by an intense El Niño and severe droughts, the fires laid waste to an area larger than many entire countries. For years, climatologists have warned about a specific scenario known as the Savanna hypothesis. The theory suggests that if burning continues, the entire ecosystem will eventually hit a point of no return. Crossing that threshold means the dense, lush rainforest we know dies off, replaced by a dry, sparse landscape dominated by yellow grasses and scattered shrubs. Scientists fear this outcome because it represents the irreversible biological collapse of one of the most critical ecosystems on Earth. But climate models rely on vast computer simulations, and biology rarely behaves exactly the way a math equation predicts. To truly understand how nature reacts, you have to test it in the dirt. Starting in 2004, researchers from Unicamp and Yale cordoned off specific plots of the Amazon, and they intentionally set them on fire. Working strictly alongside local fire and civil defense teams, the scientists spent the next 20 years running highly controlled burn cycles. They deliberately subjected the trees to extreme stress to test the forest's breaking point. This 20-year real-world stress test was the only definitive way to find out if the Savanna hypothesis was actually true. Before striking a single match, the team meticulously cataloged the area. They mapped out between 80 and 90 different tree species to establish a precise baseline of the healthy forest. This diagram illustrates the 3 specific metrics the researchers used to measure the biological armor of these trees. They tracked the density of the wood, the thickness of the outer bark, and the tree's internal hydraulics, which dictates how efficiently it can move water during the drought. Then, the burning began. One plot was subjected to intense annual fires. A second plot was burned every 3 years, and a third plot was left completely untouched to serve as a control group. After 2 decades of fire and recovery, the researchers sifted through the data and found a result that directly challenged the prevailing theory. The forest did not turn into a savanna. It looked like it might at first. In the initial phase of recovery, highly flammable, invasive grasses aggressively took over the burned areas, making the landscape even more vulnerable to fire and seemingly proving the climate models right. But then the surviving trees fought back. As they recovered, their branches spread out and closed the canopy overhead. This cut off the sunlight to the forest floor, completely choking out the invasive grass. The Amazon, it turns out, possesses a powerful inherent mechanical defense system that actively fights off total savannization. But this raised a new question. The fires did successfully kill off many of the original, slow-growing rainforest trees. So what exactly survived to rebuild the canopy? The answer is a biological shift toward what biologists call pioneer species. Pioneers are fast-growing, generalist trees. They quickly fill the gaps left by the fire, but they achieve that rapid growth by producing much thinner bark and lighter, weaker wood. Because they lack the deep, dense mass of the old-growth specialist trees they replaced, these new pioneer trees are physically incapable of storing the same high volume of carbon. The forest healed itself, but its biological makeup is different now. It survived the flames, but its capacity to act as a global carbon sink has been permanently downgraded. The study also revealed an alarming detail about exactly where these changes happen. A tree's odds of surviving a fire depend heavily on its location. Deep inside the unbroken interior of the forest, the richness of plant species remained entirely stable despite the repetitive fires. But at the edges, where the dense rainforest meets completely cleared land, the ecosystem collapsed. In areas subjected to fires every 3 years, these border zones suffered a devastating 50% drop in species richness. This disparity exposes a fatal flaw in the modern deforestation crisis. As vast tracts of land are cleared for agriculture, the Amazon is being sliced into smaller and smaller pieces. Every time a road or farm is carved out, it artificially multiplies the amount of vulnerable edge. The forest is reduced to narrow strips, stripped of the deep, protective interior it needs to insulate itself. The physical geometry of the rainforest is just as critical to its survival as the climate itself. A fractured, fragmented forest simply cannot defend itself. This 20-year experiment proves that the Amazon is an incredibly resilient fighter. It has the biological power to defy the bleakest computer models and pull itself back from the ashes. But that resilience comes with a severe cost. The continuous stress of heat and fragmentation forces the ecosystem to adapt into a shorter, weaker, new version of itself, one that holds far less carbon and remains critically fragile at its ever-expanding borders. The forest's capacity for recovery is not permission to keep setting it on fire. If we want to truly save the rainforest, we have to stop cutting it into pieces.